What would you do if someone offered you $1 million for just one night? For David Carter, a widowed single dad working double shifts to keep the lights on and his daughter in school, that question wasn't hypothetical, it was real, and it came from the last person he ever expected. A billionaire. Beautiful, powerful, untouchable, until she wasn't. Her name was Serafina Vale, the kind of woman people wrote headlines about. Fortune 500, fashion covers, family legacy, older than most nations. When she met David, she didn't see him coming. And when he said no, she didn't see it coming either. This is not a story about money. It's not even a story about love, not at first. It's about integrity, identity, and what happens when two worlds collide and something unshakable rises from the wreckage. You're about to step into a story where class lines blur, pride is tested, and one man's refusal echoes louder than any yes ever could. Stay with us, because once the offer's made, nothing will ever be the same. The buzz of flickering fluorescent lights hummed above David Carter's head as he scrubbed the last of the diner booths clean. The late-night shift always left the place smelling like burnt coffee and old fryer grease, but he didn't mind. It was honest work. It paid enough, barely. He glanced at the time. Nearly 2 a.m. Outside, the streets of downtown were quiet, save for the occasional flash of a passing car or the rumble of a trash truck. David moved like a man with a purpose, not fast, but steady, controlled. That was how he lived now. Measured, focused. He untied his apron, tossing it into the laundry bin with a practiced flick of his wrist. Another night done. Another 5 hours until Lily would be up for school. His daughter was the one thing that made all of this make sense. She was 8, bright, brave, asked hard questions at the worst times and made him laugh when he forgot how. As David stepped outside into the cool night air, he adjusted the strap of his old backpack and began the walk home. He passed high-end stores with mannequins draped in dresses worth more than his monthly rent, restaurants with velvet ropes and white tablecloths. He didn't resent any of it. He just didn't belong there. That was fine. He was used to existing in the spaces between the late hours, the small apartments, the corners of the city no one photographed. What he didn't know was that less than 3 blocks away, inside the penthouse suite of the Elysian Hotel, Serafina Vale was about to step into the same night, and soon the same life. She didn't belong in his world any more than he belonged in hers. A woman like her lived on magazine covers and red carpets, in boardrooms and private jets. But that night, she felt just as untethered, just as alone. And fate, or something like it, had other plans. As David rounded the corner toward his building, he noticed a sleek black car parked slightly askew near the curb. The door cracked open, and a tall woman in a long velvet coat stepped out into the streetlight. Her heels clicked on the pavement. Her head was down. She moved like someone escaping, not arriving. David wouldn't recognize her face until later, not until her image appeared next to his in headlines he never asked for. All he saw was someone who looked lost. Just for a moment, their eyes met. And in that quiet, accidental glance before the offer, before the refusal, before everything that followed the world held its breath, 0, 5. Serafina Vale didn't usually walk alone, especially not at night, especially not without a driver waiting or an assistant buzzing nervously in her ear. But tonight was different. Tonight, she had walked out of a gala halfway through the second speech, the applause still ringing in her ears like static. Everyone there had smiled at her, the kind of smiles that hid questions, expectations, motives. It made her feel like glass, seen, admired, but never touched, never known. Now she was just a woman in heels too thin for walking, coat cinched tight, hair pulled into something elegant that felt more like a mask. The cold wind nipped at her skin. It helped. Reminded her she was real. She turned a corner and nearly collided with a man. He was tall, worn at the edges, with kind eyes and a backpack that had clearly seen more sunrises than sleep. She stepped back instinctively, but he didn't flinch, didn't leer, didn't ask for anything. He simply nodded, like you would at anyone passing by. "Sorry," she murmured, brushing past. But her heel snagged on the curb, and in one unceremonious motion, she stumbled. David caught her. Just one hand, gentle but sure, catching her arm before she could fall. "You okay?" he asked, steadying her. She blinked, that voice calm, low, real cut through everything. For a split second, Serafina felt like herself again, not the icon, not the heiress, just a woman in the street. Yeah, thank you," she said. He gave a polite smile, already stepping away. "Be careful, it's slick tonight." And then he kept walking. She turned, watching him retreat, shoulders hunched against the cold, pace unhurried. He didn't ask who she was, didn't try to take a photo. He just helped. She stood there for a long moment. The doorman at her building opened the door without asking. He knew her. Everyone did. Except him. And for some reason, that mattered. 0, 5. David didn't think twice about the woman he'd helped, not at first. He made it home, tiptoed into the tiny 2-bedroom apartment where Lily was sprawled across their thrift store couch, clutching a stuffed fox in one arm. Cartoons still flickered on mute in the background. He scooped her up gently, kissed her forehead, tucked her into bed without waking her. This was the world that made sense. Toothbrushes in a cup, dishes drying on a towel, rent due in 4 days. No room for mystery women with $1,000 coats and heels not made for cracked sidewalks. The next morning he barely had time to grab coffee before rushing Lily to school. On the way she rattled off science facts about the moon while eating a granola bar sideways. He listened, laughed, nodded, and forgot all about the brief encounter on the corner, until she showed up again. Not on the street this time. At the diner. It was early evening. David was back in his apron, serving a booth of tourists who wanted everything gluten-free but still deep-fried. He turned toward the entrance when the door chimed, and there she was. Serafina Vale. He didn't know her name. Not yet. But he recognized the stillness. The eyes that didn't scan the menu but searched the room, like she wasn't sure why she was even there. He walked over slowly. "Back on your feet?" he asked, not unkindly. She smiled, faint, but real. "Was I ever off them?" He raised an eyebrow. "Last night, sidewalk, you almost ate it." Her smile grew, a little surprised. "You remembered. You made an impression." There was a pause. Then, "I'll take a coffee, black." David nodded and walked off, her eyes following him all the way to the machine. He didn't ask why she was here, but he'd find out soon enough. 0, 5. David set the coffee down gently. No cream, no sugar. She hadn't moved, just sat there, back straight, like the booth wasn't meant to be sat in, like she was still deciding whether she belonged here. "You want a menu?" She shook her head. "Not hungry. Bad day?" She looked at him for a long moment. Just needed a different room. He understood that feeling more than he let on. He leaned on the counter nearby, watching the rest of the floor from the corner of his eye. She sat in silence, sipping slowly, occasionally glancing up as if surprised he hadn't left yet. "You work nights a lot?" she asked suddenly. 2 jobs, so yeah. Must be exhausting. David shrugged. "It is, but my daughter likes cereal with marshmallows and the occasional school trip, so..." Serafina tilted her head. "You're a dad." "Single dad." She smiled softly. "Explains the reflexes." He chuckled. "What about you? What's your story?" There was a flicker of something unreadable in her face. Practiced. Shielded. "I live nearby," she said, "and I needed to be somewhere I wasn't expected." He nodded slowly. "Well, welcome to the land of low expectations." She laughed genuinely. Light, airy, involuntary. It startled her. So did the warmth that bloomed behind her ribs. David walked away after that, letting her sit with it. And for the first time in a long time, Serafina didn't feel like leaving right away. 0, 5. The third time she came in, David wasn't surprised. He didn't smile like it was something special, he just brought her a cup of coffee before she even asked. That meant more to her than she knew how to explain. This time she wore jeans. Still tailored, still expensive, but not screaming for attention. No heels, just flats, hair pulled back. He noticed, but didn't comment. She noticed that, too. "Rough day?" he asked. "Not really. Just wanted to be here." That stopped him for a second. He slid into the booth across from her, surprising them both. "Why?" he asked, curious but not pushing. Serafina looked down, fingers tracing the rim of the mug. "Because this is the only place in my life where no one wants anything from me." David nodded slowly. "That's rare." She looked up at him. "Do you?" "Do I what?" "Want something from me." David leaned back. "Not unless you know how to fix a flickering kitchen light." A beat passed, and then she smiled, wide this time. He smiled back. And in the low light of a near-empty diner, something unspoken settled between them. Not desire, not plans, just presence. And in both their worlds, that was the rarest thing of all. 0, 5. Serafina didn't tell anyone about the diner. Not her assistant, not her PR manager, and definitely not the friends who would raise their champagne glasses in feigned curiosity and ask, "Is this a phase?" It wasn't a phase. It was peace. Every visit started the same: coffee, quiet, a few words with David. Sometimes just a nod across the room. Sometimes a question about life, about parenting, about nothing at all. And then came the day she brought Lily a book. It was tucked under her arm, wrapped in brown paper with a green ribbon. David looked at it like it was a foreign object. "What's this?" "For Lily. You said she likes space." He didn't remember saying that, not exactly. Maybe she'd overheard him on the phone, telling Lily the moon would still be up when he got home. He hesitated. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said, then quickly added, "It's just a book." He took it. "She'll love it." That night, Lily did. She fell asleep with it on her chest and a flashlight under her pillow. David found himself staring at it longer than he expected. And when Serafina showed up the next day, he offered her a slice of pie on the house. It was nothing. It was everything. The rhythm they fell into wasn't planned. She came in 2 or 3 times a week. He made her coffee, sometimes sat with her when the rush died down. They learned each other's silences. One night, the rain hit hard, the kind that blurred windows and soaked you through in seconds. Serafina arrived, soaked. Her coat clung to her, hair darkened, heels discarded in favor of worn sneakers. David raised an eyebrow as she entered, dripping and breathless. "Trouble in paradise?" Car broke down 2 blocks back. No driver, no umbrella, just me and bad choices. He handed her a towel without asking. She took it, laughing under her breath. "You always this prepared?" "I have a kid. You learn." She dried her face, then sat across from him in their usual booth. Rain pattered against the windows like a soundtrack. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said suddenly. David paused. "Depends how personal. Why are you alone?" He looked at her, surprised, then down at his hands. "My wife passed. Cancer. 5 years ago." Serafina's face softened. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "Me too." And then, very gently, she asked, "Does it still hurt?" "Every day," he said quietly. "But you learn to breathe around it." She didn't say anything, just reached across the table and touched his hand. It was small, but he let her. The offer didn't come right away. In fact, it simmered. Serafina began to notice more than she admitted. the tear in his jacket, the way he calculated tips like they were mortgage payments. The way he always declined help, always smiled like struggle, was just part of the routine. It unsettled her, because she had the means to change it. And one night, after too many board meetings and a dinner filled with hollow compliments and crystal flutes, she walked out. Again. She didn't go home. She went to the diner. David was wiping the counter, eyes heavy with exhaustion but still lit up when he saw her. She sat at the bar. No preamble, no smile. "I want to make you an offer." He raised a brow, amused. "Sounds ominous." She looked serious. Dead serious. $1 million. He blinked. "For one night," she added. David stared at her. The silence between them changed thicker, charged, confusing. "What kind of night?" Her expression didn't flinch. "Dinner. Conversation. Whatever else you want it to be. No cameras, no contracts. Just the night. Yours." He didn't respond. He just looked at her. And in that look, everything shifted. David didn't say yes. He didn't say no either. He just stood there, the rag in his hand forgotten, watching her like she had grown another head. $1 million? He repeated flatly. Serafina nodded once, calm, controlled. "And you think I'd say yes to that?" Her jaw tightened. "I think you should at least consider it." He stepped back, crossing his arms. "You think I can be bought?" "No," she said quickly. I think you deserve something good, something different. One night where you don't carry the weight of the world." David shook his head. "That's not what this is. That's not what you're offering." Her voice dropped. "Then tell me what you think it is." He didn't answer right away. He looked past her, toward the window, streaked with rain, toward the streetlights. Then he turned back. "I think you're lonely, and I think you don't know how to ask someone to stay without giving them a reason." The words hit harder than she expected. He stepped forward. "I don't want your money, Serafina." She opened her mouth, closed it again. "You can keep the offer," he said softly. "But if you ever want someone to sit with you, just sit. No price tag, no agenda. I'll be here, but not for sale." And then he walked away, leaving her speechless. Serafina didn't go back to the diner for 3 days. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how. She had built an empire by being in control of deals, narratives, her own image. But David had peeled all that away in seconds. No negotiation, no polite decline, just no. And it wasn't the rejection that shook her. It was how right he was. She had offered him money not because he was for sale, but because she didn't know how else to reach him. She didn't know what you gave a man who had nothing, and yet walked like he lacked for nothing. Her world had taught her that access, not affection, opened doors. But David wasn't a door. He was a wall that didn't need breaking, just understanding. So she stayed away. Until Friday. That morning, she passed the corner bakery where the smell of cinnamon and yeast reminded her of the quiet joy on David's face when he talked about Lily's school lunches. She turned around without thinking, bought 2 muffins, and walked 5 blocks toward the diner. He was there. Of course he was. Same apron, same tired eyes, same gentle strength. When she walked in, he looked up, no smile, just calm acknowledgement. "Back already?" he asked, voice neutral. She held out the paper bag. Bribe, no strings attached. He took it, lips quirking. "You could have just said sorry." She nodded, still learning how. They didn't talk about the offer again. Not directly. But something had shifted. The ease between them returned, cautiously. She still came by. He still brought her coffee. But now there was a weight between them, not tension, truth. One night she stayed past closing. David cleaned while she sat at the counter, sipping slowly. Lily was asleep at home, the sitter on call. Serafina had nowhere else she wanted to be. "Tell me something real," she said suddenly. David looked up. "Like what?" "Something you've never told anyone." He paused. "My daughter thinks I'm a superhero," he said. "But I still wake up sometimes, wondering if I'm enough." She exhaled. "You are." He studied her. "Your turn." Serafina hesitated, then said, "I hate mirrors. Not because of how I look, because of how I have to look back." He didn't answer, just nodded, slowly, like he understood. Then, after a moment, he added, "I don't want your money, but I do want to know who you are when no one's watching." That stopped her cold, because she didn't know how to answer that yet. But she stayed, long after the lights dimmed. Lily met Serafina on a rainy Tuesday. She was sitting at the counter, nose buried in her tablet, while David wiped down booths. He didn't expect Serafina to show up that night, but when she did, Lily's eyes lit up like a firecracker. "You're the muffin lady," she said, mouth full of chocolate chip cookie. Serafina blinked, surprised, then smiled. "I suppose I am." David chuckled. "She remembers everything related to sugar." Lily hopped off the stool and marched over. "Do you know about Jupiter?" "Only that it's very big," Serafina said carefully. Lily launched into a passionate explanation about gas giants and storm belts, while Serafina knelt down, genuinely listening, asking follow-up questions, nodding like it all mattered. David watched from behind the counter, something warm spreading in his chest. She wasn't performing, she was present. Later, after Lily was asleep in the back booth with her fox under her arm, Serafina sat beside David. "You're a good father," she said. He looked at her. "You're good with her." Serafina hesitated. "I never thought I'd want a family. My life doesn't leave room for that." David looked at her gently. "Maybe your life needs remodeling." And for the first time, she didn't disagree. The photos came out of nowhere. Blurry, low-light shots of Serafina walking into the diner, David cleaning, Lily laughing in the booth. The headline, "Billionaire Beauty's Secret Life with Single Dad." David found out first during the breakfast rush. A customer held up their phone with a grin. "That your new girlfriend?" He blinked at the screen. "What the hell?" The article spread fast. Speculation, exaggeration, invasive commentary. David's name was spelled wrong, but Lily's wasn't. He froze. He told no one. Not until Serafina walked in that afternoon, sunglasses on, tension tight in her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she said before he could even speak. "I didn't expect it to happen so fast." "You didn't do this," David said flatly. "But it still happened." He wasn't angry. Not exactly. But he was different. Closed off. "What do you want to do?" she asked softly. He sighed, glancing toward the back where Lily colored in peace. "I want to protect her." "I do too," Serafina said. He looked at her. "Then don't come back here. Not until this dies down." The words hurt. He saw it on her face. But she nodded. "If that's what it takes." She turned to leave. He didn't stop her. And the door closed, slower than usual, behind her. The diner felt quieter without her. Not physically the clatter of dishes, the buzz of late-night chatter, the hiss of the coffee machine still filled the air, but emotionally, the space she used to occupy was noticeable now. Like a light had gone out in a familiar room. David went through the motions. He worked his shifts, helped Lily with homework, packed lunches, folded laundry. Nothing had changed. But everything had. He hadn't meant to hurt her. He just couldn't risk the chaos touching Lily. He'd spent years building a life with boundaries, structure, stability, and Serafina was a storm he didn't know how to weather. The article hadn't gone away. More headlines followed. Paparazzi photos of Serafina at events looking distracted, moody, different. Speculation about her disappearing for nights at a time. And always, quietly, David's name was in the shadows of those pieces. He didn't contact her, didn't know what to say. But he missed her. Lily did too. "Is the muffin lady mad at us?" she asked one night, small voice and wide eyes. David hesitated. "No, baby. She's just giving us some space." "Oh." Lily looked down. "I liked her." David wrapped his arms around her. "Me too." And somehow that made it worse. Serafina Vale hadn't cried in years. But after leaving the diner, she sat in the back of her car, parked 2 blocks away, and let the tears fall. She wasn't sad in the way she was used to, that dull, chronic ache of loneliness masked by perfection. This was different, sharper, personal. David had told her to stay away, and it made sense. It really did. But sense didn't dull the ache. For the next week, she buried herself in work New Deals, photo shoots, boardroom meetings. She smiled when cameras clicked, nodded through interviews, made appearances. But inside, she wasn't present. Her assistant noticed. So did the press. And so did her mother, who called just to ask if the rumors were true, as if Serafina owed her that. She didn't answer. Late at night, she scrolled past the headlines. She saw comments about David, about Lily, speculation that turned something sacred into gossip. She wanted to protect them the same way he had protected her that first night in the rain. So she called her legal team. "I want everything scrubbed," she said. "Photos, mentions, anything that links him to me. I don't care how much it costs." Because even if she couldn't be near him, she could still protect his peace. 2 weeks passed. The headlines cooled. The paparazzi moved on. Serafina's silence, her team's efficiency, and the public's short attention span did their work. David noticed. He saw fewer whispers during school pickup, less tension in the diner. Lily stopped asking about the muffin lady, but her drawings still featured a tall woman with red lips and a soft smile. He wanted to believe it was over, that the storm had passed. But every night, after Lily fell asleep, he stared at his phone. He never saved Serafina's number. He didn't have to. It lived in his memory like her laugh, quietly unforgettable. He typed messages he never sent. Then one day, a knock at the door interrupted dinner. He opened it and froze. Serafina stood there in jeans and a hoodie, holding a grocery bag in one arm and a nervous smile on her lips. "I bought pasta," she said. David stared at her. "I know you didn't ask, and I'll leave if you want. I just—" She paused, exhaling. "I didn't come to fix anything. I just came to be here." David stepped aside. She walked in. The kitchen smelled like garlic and something burning slightly. And for the first time in weeks, the apartment felt like home again. Dinner was quiet, not tense, not awkward, just gentle. Serafina helped Lily grate cheese. David drained pasta. The apartment was warm with the scent of tomato sauce and the sound of Lily singing a made-up song about noodles. They ate by candlelight, not for romance, but because the overhead bulb had blown and David hadn't replaced it yet. It was perfect. After Lily was in bed, Serafina helped wash dishes. They stood at the sink shoulder to shoulder, hands occasionally brushing. Finally, David broke the silence. "Why did you really come back?" She didn't look at him, just kept scrubbing a plate. "Because I missed your silence." He paused. "My silence? You don't fill it with noise. You just let things be. You made space for me without asking for anything in return." He dried his hands and leaned back against the counter. "You didn't have to bring groceries. I know. You didn't have to do any of it. I wanted to." He looked at her, expression unreadable. "You scared me. I scare everyone." He shook his head. "Not like that. You made me want something I thought I couldn't have." She turned, finally meeting his eyes. "Then let's stop being afraid." He didn't move, but he didn't turn away. They didn't fall into each other. They grew into each other carefully, like people who had both lived through enough endings to respect the quiet miracle of a beginning. After that night, Serafina came by more often. Not every day, not with grand gestures, but enough to matter. Enough that Lily would yell, "She's here!" before David could even open the door. She fit into their world slowly, helping with dishes, listening to Lily's endless monologues about space and sea creatures, sipping burnt coffee like it was gourmet. She never tried to impress. She just showed up. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch with cereal still in her hair, David and Serafina sat outside on the apartment steps. The city was quieter at night, less demanding. "I used to think love had to be earned," Serafina said, "that I had to be perfect to deserve it." David didn't look at her, just let the words settle. "I was always someone's investment, someone's brand. I don't know how to just be." "You're doing it now," he said softly. She glanced at him. "What about you? What did you used to believe?" He smiled, a little sad. That being strong meant doing everything alone. They were both wrong once. But not anymore. They kept it quiet. No press, no headlines, no declarations. Just slow mornings with pancakes and cartoons. Quiet nights with stories and silence. Walks in the park, shared glances across messy kitchens. Serafina once said it was like living in parentheses, a small pause in the middle of life, where everything made sense. One Saturday, she invited them both to her estate. David hesitated. "It's just a garden," she promised. "No cameras, no suits." He agreed, mostly because Lily was already putting on her sparkly shoes. The garden was enormous, manicured, peaceful, in a way that felt both natural and expensive. Lily ran between rows of roses and butterfly bushes, laughing. David watched her. "She doesn't know this isn't normal." "That's okay," Serafina said. "Normal is overrated." They walked slowly along a stone path. David glanced sideways at her. "You know, if you ever do want to make me an offer again." She raised a brow. "Don't lead with money," he said. She smiled. "Noted." He stopped, turned toward her. "Offer me something harder." "Like what?" "Time, honesty, patience." Serafina nodded. "I can do that." And in that moment, surrounded by silence, sunlight, and second chances, she offered her heart. And this time, he took it. The photo wasn't planned. David was tying Lily's shoelace on the front step. Serafina was sitting beside them, hair windblown, wearing one of his old hoodies. Lily had just made a joke, something about Jupiter having more gas than her dad, and Serafina laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. That was the moment the neighbor across the street, Mrs. Grant, who baked too much and gossiped more, snapped the photo. She sent it to David the next morning with a simple message. "You look happy. About time." He didn't send it to Serafina, not right away. He just saved it, printed it, put it on the fridge. Because it wasn't glossy. It wasn't framed. It was real. One afternoon, Lily looked at the photo and said, "That's my favorite." David glanced over. "Yeah? Why?" "Because we look like we belong." And maybe that was it. They didn't fix each other, didn't save each other. They just showed up, over and over, until showing up turned into staying. Serafina still had her world, the wealth, the headlines, the responsibility. David still had the dishes, the dad jokes, the late shifts. But now, between those two worlds, they had built a third. Home.